So, hello everyone, welcome to the Honest Wargamer. I'm your host, Rob. It's the Monday night show, or AOS Mondays as it's known. I'm joined by Mr. Nathan Prescott.
Hello again. How you doing?
Yes, hello again, correct. And also Mr. James Powell. Hi, James.
Do you ever get that feeling of deja vu?
We have been live for about an hour talking about the news and other stuff. And if you would like to go and check out the whole of the show, because if you are listening to this as a podcast or as a YouTube video, you can go check it out on our Twitch VOD or on our new YouTube channel, The Honest Wargamer Streams, where it's all uncut and uncensored. However, we're going to jump straight into the subject today, which is Nathan, me, and James are about to become the world champions of Warhammer and not wrestlers in Puerto Rico. It's very important to know that.
So shame. Such a shame.
Such
I
a shame.
thought we were going to win the Ladies World Cup.
We're not ladies.
Defeated at the first hurdle. Defeated at the first hurdle.
We were gonna, Nathan, and then I started filling in the box, and box 3 was, are you female? So I had to press no, and I was like, maybe we'll get away with this. And then box 4 was, what country do you represent? I was like, none of them.
None.
We don't recognise any borders.
Yeah. So then we were out.
Right, okay, so what am I referencing? Okay, so Games Workshop have announced the World Championships of Warhammer, the WCW. The World Championships of Warhammer, WCW. Okay, so, and what does this mean? And there's a Warhammer community article. I don't think I need to read through it, but I'll give you the gist. What they've said is a bunch of independent tournaments around the world will become feeder events for the World Warhammer Championships. Now, a couple of my friends are from the USA, and I'm sure some of you listening or even watching live are from the USA. They have said it's being held in Atlanta, in Georgia, and their response from a couple of my US mates were the words "yikes." They said "yikes," and I was like, "And
What does that mean in America?"
It's just, I don't think it's necessarily like the safest place, is what they're saying. But
what, America?
America generally, yes, correct. But I think in America you pick your battles, and I think.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And then you say yikes.
Yeah, yikes. Yeah.
Yikes.
So, this is for a qualifying event November the 16th to the November the 19th. 170 players across loads of different game systems. Just to give you a quick kind of like dirty math, if you did 4 game systems like Blood Bowl, 40k, Age of Sigmar, and like Kill Team, then you'd end up with about 42 entrants. If they split it up against even more, you might have even less entrants. What they've said is that your independent event, but they're going to judge. They'll basically be like, look, I'm running LVO. Can this be a qualifying event? And they're obviously going to say yes to LVO because it's massive, goes on every year. But if you're like, hey, I'm Jimmy, and I'm running an 8-person one-day GT, in Swindon. Can I be a qualifying event? And they'll be like, probably not, Jimmy. I'm sorry. So they're going to pick the. Yikes! Correct. Yeah, yikes.
Do you know what would be better if they said no to the LVO but yes to the 8-person?
Yeah.
That would be yikes. Look, this is nice. Everyone in the chat, Trespassing Bucharest says Atlanta is absolutely fine, not yikes. Okay, well then never mind. I'm sorry. Maybe I'm just speaking to some fancy lads. That's what it is. Okay.
Trespassing in Bucharest. Cool name.
Cool name, I agree. So there'll be feeder events, right? So all of the events, so we've already had a couple in the UK that have announced to be feeder events, such as Bloodshed in the Shire, which is in about 6 weeks, the LGT, which is much, much later in the year. We haven't heard which other ones. I assume some of the Warhammer World event ones as well will become events. And then they've also been a little unclear right now as to like what kind of relationship they're going to have with the events themselves. As an example, very recently, a larger event that we're all aware of just instigated a kind of a no 3D print policy, and we'll talk more about this later. And I was like, why is that been put in there? That's never been in there before. It's a weird thing to add. And now, if you've been having conversations behind closed doors about stuff, that does make a lot of sense if you kind of read between the lines. So we don't know what.
So is that no 3D prints? No, like, what if I want to buy like my whole army from a different company?
Then probably not. No. Like, you probably would be allowed to compete and play. I think it's going to be really dependent on the tier. Let's talk about that in a bit. Let's talk about what it is first, right? So you win an event that's a feeder event, and then you get a ticket. I don't know if you get, like, flights. So they did something similar to this last year, but it was a much smaller affair. And I don't know if they did flights and accommodation. They did last year play for flights and accommodation. I don't know if this year they'll end up playing for flights and accommodation for 170 people.
170 people is big,
because
right?
didn't they send the winners from
LGT,
the London thing? Oh,
Yes.
yeah, to somewhere.
Yeah. So
play
they might still be paying for like all those flights and accommodations, or it might just be a free ticket.
How many? What, for 250 people?
170.
170.
170.
It's quite a lot of people, right? But
Yeah.
you know, like I think this is a huge deal. This is a massive deal. We're going to talk about this in a lot. Like, this isn't just kind of like, oh, it's a fun thing happening. This is
How many people fit on an aeroplane, you reckon? Was it about 170 or more? Do you think they'll just buy an aeroplane and fly it around picking people up?
like a bus.
Yeah.
Imagine, where are you? We're from England, so we're the first stop, and we're going to fly to 42 countries or whatever, and we'll get there in 3 weeks. Imagine the toilet. Like, the toilet at an event is bad enough. Imagine how bad the toilet on the plane would be. Oh, gross.
Anyway, so I don't think that they're going to buy a one plane and have just some flight, but maybe. Right, so so there's going to be these feeder events, and these are probably, so any big independent event that's happened anywhere in the world will probably now be a Games Workshop event. And then let's talk about your initial reactions. Nathan, what's your initial reaction to the whole thing?
To there being a WCWX thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, sounds exciting. Yeah. When do we start?
Now,
so we're going to win it, did we say?
Oh, we're going to win it. We'll talk about our training
Oh.
montage at the end, maybe.
Cool.
But are you focused and ready?
I'm focused. Squig Herd is out there doing press-ups as we speak.
Perfect.
What about the ones in your pocket?
They're on the bench.
Okay.
They're ready. Tag me in, coach. I'm ready.
They're
ready to
getting
get
ready
in.
to get tagged in. Yeah. No, yeah, it sounds exciting. Yeah, it's just extra stuff. If I don't want to do it, then I probably won't do it. But otherwise, I'll keep an eye on it. I don't think I'll be participating, to be fair. But
What? We're going to win?
other than winning, that's the only
Okay.
participation. As long as I can win by winning 2 games out of 5, then that's fine.
Okay.
'Cause that's-
Well, we'll talk about what is required to win, because I think that's going to become quite interesting. James, what's your initial reaction? Chat, what's your initial reaction?
Well, it's a weird one, right? Because they have to do something. I think, like, as a company, what they've basically done is relied on the community to push, like, making it a bigger thing, and they had to do something. I mean, it's still a weird mess where you're like, oh, we're going to have this event where you can play at a random event and qualify to go play at our, like, World Series, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, like, I think, like, if they're promoting what happens and what they do and stuff, then great.
Well, they're promoting match play more, aren't they? And it's
Yeah, which
being
is
a bit more, hopefully getting a bit more serious about it. So
yeah, I think that's the thing. Like, if they want it to be like, I don't know, an e-sport, then they have to. And like, it'd be interesting to see.
What would a tabletop esport be called?
WWC. Not Puerto Rico.
Okay,
Brackets
good.
after.
Yeah, sorry, carry on.
Yeah, well, I know where you're going. I think that's the thing, right? Like, you've pushed quite a while that you think this needed a space where it was more like celebrated like an esport would be. And I think the interesting thing has to be that the multi-billion company that owns it, if they want that for it, which I think they probably do because that's the way it has to go. Now they sell loot boxes. Was that they have to put some money behind it instead of just taking it all out.
James, there's so many great points you've made there, and we should break them down individually, because I agree with you. Like, there's an absolute arrogance to the I'm going to we're about to cream the crop off of for like decades, years at least, of hard work of many people and input of money and time and effort and resources, and then a multi-million-pound company's come on top and it's like, but what if this is ours? And you're like, okay, this is pretty outlandish of you. I'll start with my initial reactions are that it's a huge positive. That's my initial reaction, is that it's a huge positive. And my reasoning behind it being a huge positive is, as you all know, it's something I've advocated for a very long time. I think recognizing people that play really well is something that's really, really important. I think giving people a vehicle to put some passion and enthusiasm into playing games at a very high level is something I've always been a big a big pusher of, a big advocate for. And so I'm really excited to see it, especially with the main company. I think it's really exciting that the main company are like, look, we're going to do this. I'm mega keen about this, ultimately, because I think it really gives some high profile. And it also means that Games Workshop themselves have to recognize match play even more. It's a part of their conversation. It's a part of what they do. You know, they can't let us get back to 70% win gargants, because then it just becomes a bit more comical. And also, if you look at how other companies, even when I was working at Games Workshop, this is something that I pushed for significantly. Because if you look at other companies like Wizards of the Coast, so Magic the Gathering have been doing a pro tour since 1996. So GW are only 17 years behind that as a process. Which is it's almost a fucking generation, behind, but fine. You got things like esports, which obviously have exploded in popularity as well. But ultimately, I think it will grow the player base, which is great because it's more opportunity for more friends. It will just generally make stuff more popular, and I think that's great. And also, they have to make a better game. They have to make a better game with more resources. I say have to. They probably won't. But I feel like that should be the I feel like that they would have to. They probably still won't. That's pretty funny. I also just had some Wizards of the Coast are not a great example right now. Obviously, that's true. Also, corporations are always going to cooperate. So what you have to remember is the initial excitement about the community outreach that's coming from GW will eventually turn to disdain in the 5 to 10 year window of corporations have to cooperate, where eventually, because of shareholder investment as they work, they'll have to work out how they can make more money from that circuit rather than less. As an example, I'm sure at some point they'll have to license the tournaments. In order to run a tournament, you'll have to buy a license. I'm sure will be something in the next decade because it makes more money, James. So why wouldn't you do it? And before anyone says they wouldn't do that, please don't forget that in 2021, when we're meant to have fucking flying cars, they stopped digital books. Stopped them. Like it was the 1900s. So,
don't get me back on it. Don't get me back on my box.
Back on your flying car.
Yeah. But overall, positive is kind of my point. Before we do anything else, anything you guys got to say about either of those things before we crack on?
Yeah, I think for me, and maybe I'm just seeing this negatively, but I think for me, I'm not even sure I see it as a positive community outreach. I think lots of the stuff they do as a company is negative community based anyway. And I think for me, I'd see it as it's cool. And if they pay for people's tickets, that's also good. Okay, so some follow up, because I've just got some information in this. If you're not a Games Workshop Open or LGT Acon LVO Nova level event, then your event can be a qualifier, but your event pays for the winner's travel. Does that make sense? Okay. Okay, so if you're a small event, you could advertise it by saying you get to go to the qualifier, but you're paying for all the transport.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if I'm a biggish event or matey with Games Workshop, they will pay for the travel.
Yes.
So
that already sounds dumb as.
So they've listed a load of tournaments that are really big ones and said those will be paid for.
Mm-hmm.
And then there will be a certain number of other tournaments that will be designated, but they'll have to source their own travel.
Yeah, Tristan. Wow, finding a way to make tickets more expensive. That's pretty true. That's pretty fun. That's just that is an unconfirmed source on that bit. Like, because again, they haven't put out a lot of information other than what's here. But like, I trust the source who's writing in the chat about it. So hopefully that's spot on accurate. But I'm sure they're going to pay for some tickets, and also like tickets for those events are going to go like end up being pretty rare and pretty hot property. So if like the event organizers,
not when it's in my garden and there's 8 people and I've guaranteed I've won. Like,
yeah. You have to set a ceiling for how many tournaments can qualify. You can't have 1 million contestants, and there genuinely aren't enough tournaments around the world for them to have 1 million, but they could have a lot, right? Which is important. Okay, let's talk about the independent tournament community and its integration, because I think this is pretty interesting because there's some stuff to touch on. So the first bit is that obviously all these independent events, or previously were independent events, would it be fair to say now if they are a qualifying event, it's just a Games Workshop event? That seems like a fair thing to say.
I think it depends how much input Games Workshop have, right?
On the pack, yeah.
Like, I've been to Bloodshed in the shows. I had a nice time. But if suddenly it's like, this is now a Games Workshop event, you can't bring any model that isn't a Games Workshop model, the terrain is now all Games Workshop terrain, like, you have to have the official printed book, then yes. It has to be scored a specific way.
Well, that's the thing they don't know. Now, they have written something in the article, and I'll cut back to this now, yeah? For the past 2 years, hold on, let me see it. At the time of writing, we have more than 170 qualifier slots from 18 countries across 3 continents. This includes Australia, Germany, France, Spain, Sweden, UK, and US. And don't forget, this is an Age of Sigmar show, right? So a lot of this is going to be, they're talking about 40k and give a fuck about AOS. But we'll be announcing details of our own US Open series. World Championships are all about community and celebrating every aspect of the hobby. So each event will have their own qualifying criteria determined by the individual organisers. So, there's a couple of things to read in that, because there's a couple of ways to misinterpret this. At official Warhammer events, players might qualify through competitive-centric Best Generalship Award or the more rounded Best Overall, which also includes painting and hobby skills. So they might not have it be it's just the best general from every event. It might be that it's the best overall, because some events prefer best overall, which is like a combination of like best sports, painted armies, and also your generalmanship, right? Yeah, display boards. Thank you, Gemoy, in the chat for picking that up. Which opens up. Let's start there. Let's just start there before we do anything else. Okay. Number one. I go to an event, and the golden ticket is for best overall, okay? That means I try and be a good sport, okay? I give everyone some little tokens as I start to play, buy them a beer at the thing, the whole business, yeah? But I still beat them, okay? So I got to be a good general and a good sport, no problem. But then my army is a problem. This is a problem that we got right now, because I can't commission paint my army, surely. Can I? I wondered about this. I've been thinking about this all day, and I want to know what everyone thinks. Okay, James, let me ask the chat, and then, hit me up. So, like, can you commission paint an army and still win Best Painted? Yes or no? James?
Oh, no.
Okay, can it count towards your hobby score?
No.
Yes.
Oh, Nathan, with the flow it in there.
Oh. Well, yeah, I mean, if the hobby score is going to be a part of it, then you've got to take it into account. The hobby, I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, welcome to the party.
Yeah. Yeah,
Oh, carry on, Nath.
yeah, I reckon if you've got to still allow them to be able to earn some points on that criteria, I guess. So
Well, I mean, it's a best overall.
also, yeah.
So
I mean, how far back do you take like the model thing? Like if like what if somebody else builds the army and then you paint it?
like, yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a great question. That's
Like,
kind of what I was asking. Because Mega
It's just,
Hamster, like,
weird.
it's not a question about like, let's just imagine everyone is above board, right? Let's just imagine everyone's above board. No one's going to pretend like they haven't had their army commission painted, which I'm sure you can do, and it's really a non-issue because the tournament organisers, like, nudge, nudge, wink, wink. Obviously, this actually really throws some flies in our ointment, so we'd not be a part of it. So there's that, right? But let's just imagine. So I've got, I mean, I don't have the money to get stuff commission painted, but I'm just saying, right? You have your army, and then you've painted it and built it. Also, if you're going to win best overall, your army has to look fucking good. Do you know what I mean? Like, you have to be good at the game, and also your army has to look really good, and that's really fascinating because, like, are we going to see the general level of armies leveled up? Like, are we just going to see people borrow armies? Can I even get any points for how my army looks if I borrow an army? Like, what are the fucking rules? How does it work?
Like, I always think this is messy anyway.
What?
Like if you like you go to an event, right?
Yeah.
And hilariously, actually, I went to one of the MCP ones I went to, and someone won best painted, but the army he won best painted with was owned by one of the guys he was there with, because it was his army that he'd borrowed. Right?
Yeah.
So this guy, like, people voted, like, the community. So it was like, put your army out for best painted. This guy put his army out for best painted, won best painted, and when the award came up, one of their other mates was like, "You didn't even paint that, it's his."
Amazing.
So then at
Absolutely
this
amazing.
point, this guy goes up to get his award because it's actually his army. And I'm like, well, at least he's here. If he wasn't here, this kid's just won best painted. He's not done it. He's not paid. He's just turned up with his mate's army.
I mean, like...
But I also think really weird, right? Because in my head, I
Was the
wouldn't
best
put the
painted
army out.
there.
Yeah, I wouldn't put the army out. Yeah. Like,
I would, yeah.
like, so, you know, but then, like, and also, like, what happens? Okay, here's another example, and it's not even about best painted, right? Because if you're best overall, it means you've got the best generalship, the best army, and the best, or like, the average of those three is higher than everyone else. So it doesn't have to be the best painted, but it just has to be well painted, I guess, above average. Is that fair to say? Surely it's got to be above average, right? Otherwise, like, yeah, so it's got to be that. Which I find quite interesting and quite fun. I just love that conversation because I'm like, I don't know what the answers are, and maybe people know, maybe it's already solved. Like Adepticon was a bit interesting last year because there was like, you must have had a display board like in order to get high enough on that metric and a bunch of other stuff. And then like people that ended up like going 5-0 didn't win the event. They were beaten by people who went 4-1 and also had a cooler painted army. Which is, again, generally threw the internet into a spasm because it was very funny. Because, like, I guess that's best overall. We don't generally tend to do best overall in the UK. A Renaissance man is another name for it, I think, is what people sometimes use. But, yeah, that's my first kind of, like, bit in the ointment is, like, I don't know what it is. And also, who's going to win the Games Workshop event? Is the Games Workshop going to be best general, the World Championships? Or is the world champion going to be the best sport, the best hobby, and the best gamer? What's the criteria for that, if that makes sense?
I did that Middle-earth Throne of schools recently. And the voting was your game score plus your sports score plus your paint score. But all of it, so it was voted on your game score is your game score. Then it was sports votes given by the opponents and favourite armies given by the opponents. So like sports for how nice you were, army for how nice your army was.
Mm.
But I think like that's messy too, right? Because that's nice, but then if the
If you had
other
a
people go in,
commissioned painted army in that situation, then obviously there's nothing you can do about it. You can't say, "Don't look at my army," because they just vote the people that
yeah, they're
played
just
against.
voting on it.
Yeah.
Like I
So
guess
they're
it's
just
that
gonna
weird
say,
thing
he's
of,
got the nicest army I played against. I'm going to give him.
and I guess it's that weird thing, right? So if I turn up at a table and I've just paid £1,000, I don't even know how much it would cost. £1,000 to have my army painted, and it looks good, and someone's like, "Oh, this looks amazing," and I'm like, "Oh, maybe he's voting on this." Do I then say, "Oh yeah, I just had it commission painted. It was this person," because technically that's probably what I should do, because the person who commission painted it, like, that's how they get more business, right? Or do I go, "Oh yeah, thanks, took me hours"?
Yeah, I know. Like, it's honestly interesting. So we do know some things. We know that Games Workshop kind of trialed this system earlier in the year, and they had an event like a few months ago. Well, in fact, was it even in December? I think it might have been in November. The US final on November, they had two separate champions, best overall champ and the best general champ. So there'll be two world champions. So you'll be the co-world champion.
That's the way it should be. It
I
should
can-
be ruled by two people, not one.
That's two managers, two cooks. Yeah, that's how things work better. That's Games Workshop really learning their lessons from their own business and saying, look, we have too many managers doing a job, so actually more is better than less. That works really well. Games Workshop could do two qualifying events, though, GT qualifier and a Throne of Skulls qualifier. Yeah, of course. And they probably will go through that process. So you'll probably end up with a more overall qualifier and then a pure generalship qualifier, which is quite interesting.
But what a terrible end event for the person who won best overall.
Why?
Because I feel like then at that point you could have some like of the world's best players versus like an average player who paints really nicely and is like generally nice, and then fly all the way to Atlanta and they're like, "Oh, game one, I got
And
this
then,
guy.
yikes.
Oh, he tabled me in turn two." Oh, but it'll be okay because it'll level out by game three, and you're like, "Oh no, 50% are like the keenest and like hardcore." Didn't paint their army as well, but are here to play like a pro against some guy who's like plays once a month but can paint like a boss.
Well, what's also important as well is because last year they did two brackets. They did basically a generalship bracket, and then they did what's the right word? Another bracket, like a best overall bracket. So you fought in different ones.
Yeah.
But Phil Marshall, who's here from the UK, who is like a horrifically good gamer. I think he played like 250 tournament games last year. Very solid is Phil. But because they only used ITC points to pair up these people instead of TSN rankings, yeah, Phil doesn't have any ITC points because he's never played in the US and so doesn't give a fuck, right? So they put him in the hobby track. So they put this absolute monster in the hobby bracket, and he's just there like, they're like, "I've painted this guy, his name's Reginald, he's the general of our whole army." And then Phil's like, "All right, dickhead, it's Master Magic Arcane Tome, you're dead, fuck off." Which is genuinely quite funny. Like, I quite like that, it makes me laugh. Even further complicated it, what if the centerpiece model is commissioned but the rest of the army is painted by the player? Listen, I don't know what the answer is the point. That's why I don't really fuck with hobby scores. Like, hobby stuff, whenever I have an event, I just like, what's the coolest army? Everyone votes on it, and they're like, that's the coolest army. I'm like, that's a vibe, whatever. Like, also, what if you 1 year win best overall because your army is, like, let's say I painted a beautiful, like, Cities of Sigmar army. Like, let's say I like did some, like, I don't know, something like an incredibly gorgeous Phoenician army, a bunch of blue phoenixes, just like I dry brush them up super nice. Like, you know, maybe I even do some conversions. Maybe I do a couple of griffins. You know, like really make it look the business, right? And then I just every single year take it to an event, and then I just get like best painted, best. What if it's a Nurgle army? What if it's a Nurgle army that's green with some like purple base in, and I use it at every event for 5 years, and I just get like best painted or like second best painted, huge hobby points for the same thing year after year after year, like some sort of perpetual fucking motion machine. What about then? Is that okay? Is that fine? Can you just do it year by year? Nathan, your thoughts?
Sounds perfect.
How much dust does it got on it at this point?
Absolutely none, because you keep driving
No,
past it every
then
time.
fine. I'm fine with it.
Polished every
I'd see-
weekend.
See, I think in my head, right, if you'd, let's say you spent, like, you did one army, but you spent, like, I don't know, 6 straight months on it, and you play it for 3 years, like, I think part of me's like, I think that's better than you had $2,000 to pay someone.
What do you mean?
Like, I think I would rather someone continually got high hobby points and one hobby score with one army that they had done themselves for 5 years,
Yeah.
then someone turned up to an event and just had $2,000 to spend on having an army painted.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. Like, I feel like if you're winning it, you need to paint it. Like, sorry, bro. Like.
That's where my head would be. And I think the weird thing is, and like I say this in hopefully the least dickish way I ever could, but there have been plenty of points, I guess, over the years of playing Warhammer where I probably could have afforded to pay $2,000 and have someone paint an army. Probably. I have always chose not to. One, because I like painting my own armies. I feel like, for me, it gives me more of an attachment to it. And it's never been my thing. But I also get, like, there's loads of people where it's like, oh, I don't like painting and I really like playing. And I think those people should, like, it's great that those people can pay for an army and want to pay for an army. But in my head, it's just a really weird flex that you would pay $2,000, have something painted, still be really proud of it. It's your money. But then, like, at an event, someone be like, that's the best. Like, GW is a good example. And for those people who have never played at Warhammer World, normally what happens is someone from the staff team will walk around and be like, that's a really nice army. Can we put it in the cabinet? And at lunch, you'll vote on it. And I feel like if it was me at that point, I'd just be like,
That's a commission army. Do you
I had
still
this
want it in there?
Yeah. I had this commission painted. I didn't paint it.
Yeah.
Do you still want it in the cabinet?
Yeah. And then they can say, oh, well, are you happy accepting an award for your really well painted army that you technically paid for?
And
that's weird, right?
my answer would be, fuck yes, James. Yeah, give it me.
I pay to win.
I feel like, for me, I think it's a really weird thing, right? Like if you were if we're comparing Warhammer to a sport, right? If you're a kickboxer.
Oh, I'm about to win this. I'm about to win this. So yeah, go on.
You go to an event, right? And you're like, oh, my leg's a bit hurty today, but I've paid this guy $3,500. He's gonna kick you on my behalf, and he won. Would you go and take the trophy?
Well, I got another one for you. Yeah, there's Jensen Button, fucking waffling a bottle of champagne. He's an F1 driver, for people who don't know. Yeah, like there he is in his car that he's not built. He doesn't know how to build, probably, or maybe he does. I don't know. Like, he hasn't built. He hasn't, like, fixed it. There's a team of 3 billion engineers back in the office, yeah, doing wind resistant stuff. No, he hasn't even painted it, Nathan. You're right. He's not even painted the fucking car, right? But he's the world champion. So, of the F1.
I mean, we're going back a few years, but yeah.
F1 stands for fast one, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's the one.
The fast one. So yeah, my point is that there are examples of sports where people pay people or people are paid to like build the vehicle for the man in the seat. Also, I think commission painting is a great thing. I think number one, it makes a bunch of artists get paid, which is wonderful. And I think number two, I think that people who are very, very busy, who work very hard and have the disposable income to pay those artists, get to have like a one-on-one relationship over something they really love. And I think that's wicked. I really do think that that's a nice thing that exists inside of our community. Same way coaching for like, Warhammer is a nice thing that exists. Some people are like, I don't know how to play. And so people pay people to be like, this is how you play. And they'll be like, oh, I've got to practice. And they're like, yeah. And they're like, I'm out. I'm not going to do that. I thought there was a secret 7 will trick you. And the answer is practice all the time. But, it's good that those cottage industries exist inside the hobby. So anyway, the painting one is interesting. All right, let's move on. Let's talk about 3D printing. Okay. So I'm going to start off with my take on it, and then you guys can jump in. It's Games Workshop's tournament. It's Games Workshop's tournament circuit. Should be Games Workshop's models. Doesn't bother me. I think that's super fair. I'm like, it's your models, bro. Cool. Also, I'm probably not going to go to those events because they sound lame. But, I'd never want to look at Skaven. I don't want to look at actual Night Runners with their fucking hands. Because I'll have, nightmares. Looking at them.
Good big hands.
They've got very big hands. Reminds me of being a kid. I don't like it. So yeah, that's my take on it. I think it's their game.
You were a kid.
Thanks for getting it, Dave. It's their game. It's their miniatures. It's their game system. I get it. But if a TO is like, oh, I see that you've used some I don't know, some cool 3D printed helmets on your Stormcast that make them look better, plus some 3D printed shields. I'm afraid that's just a no from me. You can't win the event. I'd be like, you sound like a prick. You sound like a prick and your decisions are a prick. I'm sorry. I think it's super fair. I think it's absolutely fair that Games Workshop say, no 3D printed minis. It's our game system, it's our miniatures, it's our entire tournament circuit. But I think at this stage, with all the things available for people, you're just stepping on people's creativity. So I just judge the TOs more than I judge Games Workshop, right? Is my statement. What do you think, Nath?
Well, yeah, I guess if that's the rules that they put down for the tournament packs for qualifying tournaments, then that's, as long as it's up there in advance, then you can't really complain.
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah.
But a whole bunch of people may have bought tickets to events which they didn't know, for example. I think tickets for on sale for LVO, CanCon. CanCon did have it in their pack, though. And I think LVO's had it in their pack as well, to be fair, where, if you do well with your army, then you... I think in CanCon's case, you can't use 3D printed minis. And I think in LVO's case, because he's going to be probably the largest Sigmar events of the year, outside of maybe Adepticon. In LVO's case, you can use 3D printed minis, but if you get to the top tables, like the top 8, none of your miniatures can be 3D printed ones because they're going to feature on a stream. So that's not allowed. So no matter what, yeah.
So if you win too many games, then you have to stop playing the game.
Forfeit.
yeah.
Why couldn't it be if you get high enough, you won't get to play on stream?
Yeah, just I don't want them to see my models then, but if that's your models, those are your models. What are you supposed to do?
How can you allow someone to play an event with models and then be like, oh, but you can't win?
I'll give you the answer, and the answer is money.
Yeah, but it's dumb. Just be like, no, they can't come. You can't come. Don't bring them.
That's what CanCon did. CanCon were you can't bring them.
Yeah, but that's a better result, right? Rather than being like, you can come, but you can't win.
Yeah. I mean, then if you go and you know in advance, then you just play, win all your games, just same. Yeah.
My favorite bit is I like Nikos's strategy, where Nikos only buys old Games Workshop minis. So he's got Beastmen from the 80s, which you can pick up for I think fairly cheap, and then uses them as corn bloodletters, and he's just whatever. He's these are cheap, fuck you. It's pretty funny.
I really like the debate with Games Workshop, which I once had in a store, but would really like to have at a tournament. Where, do you remember when you bought an old box, you got a cardboard standee?
Oh, yeah.
It's their model, right? If I glue it on the right size base, can I use it?
I don't know, man. I don't know.
But it's theirs, right? It's got their copyright on the bottom.
Yeah, it's not 3D printed. It's 2D.
No, it's not 3D printed.
Yeah.
It's a 2D print, and it's official.
Yeah. Like I did get 4,000 points of cities proxies by buying one Bretonian army, says someone in the chat. I think that's also the interesting bit as well. Like what if I decide to use some Bretonian knights as, let's say, I don't know, blood knights, because I think they're cool and they fit the theme of my kit bashed flesh eater courts army. That's going to be fine. I mean, like ultimately, like I've said my piece on it. Like what will be interesting to see the trickle down effect of it. So if your event is like a Games Workshop feeder event or whatever it is, or I guess it's just a Games Workshop event. That's what it was. Is what it will be. Then you'll probably have to insist that there's like a no 3D print rule.
Do you know what I think's? I'm going to just jump in.
I would like to hear it, but can I just let Adam speak from the chat at the minute? Adam played in a team event this weekend. He played against the Games Workshop rules dev team, and my life peaked when I used Warhapedia versus the rules writer this weekend. Well done, Adam.
Did they say anything to him? I'd like to know.
Yeah. Did they say anything to you? That's a great question. Probably not.
Did they say?
They're just normal people, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just intrigued because I can't think that they'd give a damn. But I'd be interested to know if they did.
Yeah, I agree. Warpedia is really good. He was great, to be honest. There you go. Easy.
Sweet.
I'm sure people like that are going to continue to be great. But the thing is you can't, it's great when you're on a one-on-one basis because it's chill. But, from a company standpoint, you have to make a set of rules, right?
Well, yeah. He's unlikely to play against the board of directors. If he did, then they wouldn't be so great, I'm sure.
Exactly.
To be fair, Adam's not that great, right? So maybe he would.
So the interesting element with the 3D prints is whether or not it ends up trickling down into effectively the rest of the community. I, for one, obviously am never going to run a feeder event anyway. I don't really want to. And when I run the Club Clash this year, that should be a pretty big event. I don't want it to be a feeder event. I just want it to be a fun event where lots of people get drunk and have a good time. That's what I want it to be. I want people to bring 3D printed minis that they think is cool and awesome and fun, and Games Workshop minis if they think they're cool and awesome, and third-party minis from someone else if they think they're cool and awesome. Because the thing is, it's quite interesting. We had this long debate about hobby a minute ago. What constitutes good hobby? Do you have to do it yourself? Can you get it commission painted? The cottage industry around hobby. But then the conversation around sculpting is sacrosanct because it's a product. Games Workshop don't offer painted minis, and they don't offer a painting service. So it doesn't matter who does it. They don't really give a shit. They're like, as long as someone painted it, I don't give a fuck. But they're like, there are minis. We sell them. Yeah, that's money. You have to use that. So we support creativity to our wallet.
But it's interesting, right? Because I also think where's their line on 3D prints? Because I've played at Warhammer World with 3D prints.
Shit, James. Shut the stream down, lads.
At an event, my Skaven army has a butt ton of random 3D printed parts in. Like a butt ton. Because there was no way I was paying 13 quid a Rattling gun. So I 3D printed all the arms and the guns and the backpacks, and they attach to standard clan rats.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, also, James, there have been Horus Heresy events at Warhammer World. That is 90% China cast.
Yeah, exactly.
Loads of those are fake. Loads of those are fake.
I could tell you stories about that too, but let's not. But honestly, my Skaven, I wasn't paying 13 quid a Rattling gun. So they're all 3D printed, all the Rattling guns, and I think I once played with 6. They walked past, they saw them, no one cared. It was in their own building. It was 50% at least their model, not on their rubbishy basis, because I 3D print those too.
Okay.
No one said anything.
So what you're effectively saying is there might be a rule, but it's going to be a lot of nudge, nudge, wink, wink rule. If someone in, let's say, Norway, shout out to the 2D6 lot in Norway, they run an event, and then they're like, this is the winner. And then Games Workshop are like, did he use any 3D printed minis? And they were like, absolutely fucking not. I promise. And they'll be like, well, we don't have the manpower resources to check, so fucking nod, wink, wink, fucking the handshake.
See you at the final.
See you at the final. You're paying for the ticket, though. As long as you don't use them on stream, I suspect they don't care. I think that that's probably going to be the case as well. I think that that will be. Unless they get more militant with it, right? Like, that has to be the purpose. Like... I mean, I don't know. I don't know what the future holds. I would assume they get more militant.
Well, this can I be really boring?
Oh yeah.
Because I read that Dice Man book.
Yeah.
And there's a really interesting point. So Brian Ansell, he takes over Games Workshop. He moves it all to Nottingham, and so basically when Ian Livingstone and Steve Jackson take a step back, there's basically two sets of fighting manager and directors.
Okay.
And Brian Ansell's like, we move it all to Nottingham. And we close our doors. We don't sell for anyone. We don't distribute for anyone. We don't license anything. We make Warhammer. We sell Warhammer. Screw everyone else. We close our doors.
Mm-hmm.
And the other side are like, oh, but we also currently sell like D&D and all these other games, and we import them and we sell them and we make all this money off this. And like that's really interesting because what basically happened was he wins and they shut their doors. And I feel like this is that same thing, right? Where it's like, do you push your own product but allow for some creative flex where it's like, you know, that guy that won Golden Demon who used water resin for a base? Are we allowing that? Because Games Workshop don't make resin. Like, how much do you close the door? And it's like, oh, if someone's printing 3D parts because they can't sculpt but they're still on our model, do we allow it? And at some point, like, they have to pick a line, I think, especially if they're doing this.
Yes, they do, and you know, and those relationships with TOs, I hope, are very frank and front of house. Effectively, like I hope there's a lot of transparency from that, but it won't be. There'll be a lot of like handshakes behind closed doors and DMs and all that silly nonsense, which eventually will get leaked to me. So whatever they try and hide, we'll find out because you can't stop the signal. That's what we've learned. Yeah, they even tried to stop piracy of books, and it made it worse. Yeah, that's not that obviously.
Yeah, that's my favorite. My favorite thing about the piracy of books is they only made it worse.
They did. But ultimately, so I think we talked about the 3D printing bit. Nathan, you got any thoughts on that element? Like, 'cause I don't think you own anything 3D printed, like, or like third party, or do you?
I've got some third party stuff.
Okay.
My Scuttle Boss spider is a third party spider.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I've got a few odds and sods. What on from the man?
But what if you were playing? So your process would be you would just read the pack. It says no 3D printed or third party minis. Would you just not take the Scuttle Boss? You'd be like, okay, fair enough. I'll not take the Scuttle Boss. Or would that affect your choice on going to the event?
Yeah, I'd either not take the Scuttle Boss or I wouldn't go to the event.
Yeah,
especially.
Yeah, because like, there's a tech list I really want to do, which is made up of this like insane dragon with this lady in front of it. And I was actually, it's on my like, I've written myself a couple of goals this year, and one of them is to paint one mini well, like one mini well. One mini well, and like learn some stuff.
One real small well.
Yeah, and I've taken some advice.
What terrain board's that going on?
It's not going on any. It's going to be like my tech list, basically. Yeah.
No, you said a mini well.
Oh,
where's the water come out?
Shit. Yeah, one perfect skink. But I'm like, now I'm not very interested in maybe producing and painting that because I'm like, well, I might not be able to use it. I mean, I'm not going to go to any Games Workshop events anyway, and I'm going to run events here. I don't know. Like I felt when I heard about the news, I thought it was great stuff for the community. I think it's wicked for the players. I think overall it's fantastic. I think it's a little less creative, which I think is sad, but also that creativity makes a lot of sense. Like, you wouldn't hold a Super Smash Brothers tournament while you're all playing some bootleg copy of Mario Kart. It wouldn't make any sense, right? Like, although that's not really what 3D printing is. It's a shit analogy, like a ladder, Nathan, as you know.
Every analogy is.
Yeah. I mean, also, I also can't go to the Warhammer Championships because I'm blacklisted. So, I mean, that also is the other reason I couldn't. Even if I qualified, I'd be blacklisted. So that's also that. But
you should go and win every event.
I can't. I'm blacklisted, James. I couldn't go.
Yeah, but how funny would it be when they're like, "Oh, how do we invite the first player of every event when he's blacklisted because it's all you.
Yeah.
There's no one else. It's just you. Maybe what you should do is just get everyone you know to go to every event but put your name in as this. Because they're all going to be on BCP. They all log in as you and they all play as you.
That would be great. Let's do that. Yeah.
Yikes.
Yikes. Yeah. Yikes. Atlanta. Yikes. Anyway. So like, I think overall, really great. I love that Games Workshop are doing this. My personal take on it. I think it's great that TOs are getting involved as well. Oh, we haven't talked about that a little bit. They have kind of like just said to TOs, I don't know. Okay, two ways of viewing it. Like, they're rewarding TOs by saying, hey, I recognize you've done some great work with your community and built up a really large player base. Person in Italy, let's say. We're going to reward you by saying anyone who wins your event, we'll fly them out to an event here. Or, that's one really positive way of looking at it. Or the other way of looking at it is, hey, I see that you've done loads of work that we've given you no money or support to do. We're going to capitalize on that to do a little bit of advertising on top of it for a very small fee. Which of those two, where do you sit on that? Do you feel a little column A, a little column B? Or do you think overall it's net positive, overall net negative? What do you think, Nath?
I guess it's always somewhere in between. They're obviously trying. They're going to be. It's an advertising thing at the end of the day, a marketing thing.
Mm.
But so yeah. But I guess hopefully we end up with more players, and that feels like a good thing.
Agreed.
For everybody, like a bigger community, probably. So yeah.
James, what about you?
Yeah, I'm probably a little column A, a little column B. Like, I think there's some good positives to it. I think, like, promoting it, the game as a whole is good. Promoting, like, good players is good for all of that. Hopefully, we talked about, like, content creators, painters, all kind of the side businesses. Hopefully it allows some trickle down. More players means more work for all of those kids. But I think without, like, and we probably never will, or we will at some point, like, without knowing the conversations that happen between the giant billion-pound company and people who, like, organize events at probably no profit most of the time.
Mainly a loss.
Yeah, like, it's hard to make a judgment, right? Like, if Games Workshop are going to these events and being like, we think what you've done is great, and what we want to do is really support your event. We want to give you this ticket. We think it will help you sell tickets. And also, here's £2,500 worth of terrain.
Yeah, like, I agree with you.
Good.
Yeah.
However, the only event that I know that we know they've picked that isn't a big fat event in the UK was Bloodshed in the Shires, which we all know the people that ran it have tried really hard to make it really good. And because I was on the list of people who went the year before, I got, like, priority purchase. And I'm not going by personal choice, not because I think it's a bad event. But it sold out in, like, I think the tickets for that sold out in about 10 minutes, the priority thing. The actual tickets sold out in, like, another 10 minutes when they released them. Like, they don't need that ticket to sell tickets. So unless Games Workshop are giving them something, seems kind of lame.
Yeah, like Adepticon is going to sell out. LVO is going to sell out. CanCon is going to sell out because it has done every year before Games Workshop ever gave away a golden ticket. It's a great point, James. I hadn't thought about that. Yeah, like, they effectively aren't increasing those. And something like Bloodshed, and because we've spoken about Bloodshed, and shout out to Dan. I hope you're listening. I want you to know, great event. I've been to Bloodshed. It's wonderful. But it's an already oversubscribed event. Ultimately, like, if Dan and the team don't want to increase the capacity for Bloodshed over the next few years, it's a super reasonable thing for them to want to not do. It's a headache, maybe doesn't make any more money, maybe they can't be asked, like a million reasons why, which are all mega valid. But then also, like, what is the purpose of that? Like, there's just this one benchmark event that's pre-sold out to other people before. Like, you're like Johnny Two Socks, yeah? You got into Warhammer Elite 2023, and you really want to go to one of the qualifying events. And it turns out they're all already sold out before you can ever go months ahead of time, and you never knew how to be a part of the process. That's kind of interesting, because you would kind of want those events to, like with LGT, like that motherfucker will grow that to like 1 million people. Yeah, he'll be like, listen, 40K next year, 900,000 people. Like, he'll do it. He will put them in like he'll put them in Dover. Yeah, he'll put them.
Yeah, but it's that weird thing, right? Like the LGT is like a money maker, right? That's one of the few events where it spins money. The food's garbage, the venue's questionably okay, and there's hundreds of people in it, and he's making some money. Like, he's got some sponsorship, he's making some money, but like the bloodshed in the Shire one is kind of like a bit of a labor of love by two people that like playing hobby, which I think most events probably are. Like,
Agreed.
1 person, 2 person, like hobby, like seeing their mates. I guess to some degree like hosting, because otherwise why the hell would you do it? And I think like on that one, it's weird to be like, we're giving you a ticket. You could sell out an event. You could sell 300 tickets. Why don't you increase to 300 tickets? But we're not going to give you any money. If they are, then excellent. But if they're not giving you any money, like, even if they said, here's $2,500 to terrain, you can now have 300 tables, because realistically, we all know they're probably giving stock over cash. Like, that gets even weirder, right? Because you're almost forcing some people from your community to maybe get into debt to run an event that maybe they can't afford, to maybe never sell out. And you know, like, I know, Dan, I've been to the event. Like, if they want to message me privately and ask me never to talk about it and tell me actually we had some money off them, then fine. If they ever don't want to, then also fine. I don't really care. But my biggest point is that I think if you're a £1 billion company that's trying to support community growth and expansion, just put your hand in your pocket.
It's a great point, James.
Like,
it's not something I've actually thought about that.
Put your hand in your pocket. And if they are, amazing, because we don't know. But if they're not, piss off.
That's a good point, James. I hadn't really thought about that. I was so excited about it, which I'm sure many people are, that I hadn't really considered the fact that they probably are spending little to fucking no money on the whole thing. And it would be good to see them support those communities.
Yeah, like, there's that weird flex, right? Like, if they're buying, what did we say, 175 tickets to America and hotels.
On an aeroplane.
One aeroplane. Yeah.
I think the weirder thing is, right, so if we're saying there's 175 tickets, but they're paying for big events but not small events, let's say they're paying for 100 tickets. So 100 tickets to America and 100 hotels. And I don't know how those...
hotel rooms, not whole hotels.
Okay, well, yeah. But I don't know how that would be split, like, worldwide. So some are going to be America, so probably less, and some are going to fly further, and some are going to fly less far. So there'd be different costs, but they're putting, like, a bit of money in, but not in the right places. Like, actually, I think, do you know what? If someone wins that golden ticket, they're probably super keen on Warhammer. They'll probably buy a ticket, and they'll probably pay for a hotel. Actually... give all these people that have spent years pushing and developing events some money, because then actually the 75, 100, 200 people that turn up to an event are having a better time.
Yeah, and also, like, they should super support, like I know that there are tournaments in the Philippines, Japan, and South Africa. Like, those are events where I would, like, just pay that ticket full whack. They'd be like, we've got 32 people in the Philippines. I'd be like, done. You're like, you've definitely got a feeder event. And then, like, some of the UK is like, but like, we've got 72 100-person events in the UK. It's like, don't give a shit. Like, how awesome would it be to get that one person out from the Philippines or, like, out from wherever? Like, that's fun, those smaller communities. All right, like, final bit.
Also, with the money thing, because if they're promoting this competitive thing, hopefully they're also feeding some more money into that games development, but inside their company, and making like the stats thing that they've started doing, and getting a bit more serious about trying to balance just improve the ecology of the gaming side of things. That'd be Good too, and
Do you know what?
that will hopefully will drive that as well. So I mean, that as an expense that hopefully they will maybe put a bit more money towards.
Yes, what you're effectively saying is that, like, if they're valuing competitive play even more, then we might see even more resources put into actually the work that they do, like, which would be good. Yeah, I agree, because you know, we've all applauded. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I agree. That's a good point. Yeah, the again, those massive rampant profits that they've made, it would be good if they reinvested those into the actual game that we all buy a lot of books for, apparently. All right, final bit. How do we become world champions? All right, chat. This is it. This is the how-to guide on how to become a Warhammer world champion. Okay, so number one, we know we've got to be a good sport. That's not a problem, because if you listen to Honest Wargamer, you're already a fucking quality human being. So that's done. We don't even think about it. But tips and tricks for being a good sport at an event. James, as the winner of several best sports, give me some tips and tricks. Go.
Do you know what? Like, I think just be a nice person. Like, I think, like, it's funny, right? Because there's always, but there's always that thing, isn't there, where people are like, oh, like, and we've all done it. Like, oh, give away a dice or buy the person a beer or like whatever. But I went to that Middle Earth event and I was like, oh, just have a nice time. And I just had like 5 really nice games where I was just like, look, I'm not here to win. I'm gonna have a nice time. I don't really know what I'm doing, but let's have a laugh. And like, even the 2 games I played against, that like people that had played for 20 years who just like ran rings around me, one who like sat with me and explained loads of parts of the games I didn't even understand, and then I still left with 5 sports votes. And I think like if you can just go to a table and be genuinely yourself.
Did someone mansplain the game to you, James?
Yeah, I got mansplained, but very nicely. Like, one of them actually helped me have a good turn.
Oh, nice.
A good turn. Oh.
Yeah, he was a really nice bloke.
Well done to him.
Time for him.
Well done to him. Probably a difficult person in his workplace, but great on a tabletop. Well done to that guy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Skills.
All right, so number 1, be a nice person. Nathan, have you got any tips and tricks?
Don't let them find out how you're cheating.
That's a good piece of advice, Nathan.
It's a great piece of advice, Nathan. Don't
Keep
let them know how you cheat.
Under wraps, yeah, and then they'll probably won't mind voting for you, a sports person.
That's true.
Thing.
That's true. Okay. My hot tip is number 1, be on a podcast or be a content creator of any variety. Yeah. And in addition, bring things that you don't overly care about, like measurement gauges and combat gauges that you've 3D printed. Just give them away. Yeah, just be like, oh, I've got 2 combat gauges. People are like, oh my god. You're like, yeah, they're gonna printed them. It's fine. Like, whatever. Do that. Gifts, bribes. Sometimes, in some cases, at some Warhammer World events, straight cash bribes.
Oh yeah.
Do you remember that? Do you remember the straight cash bribe? Do you remember that debacle? Do you remember what happened? Someone paid someone. That's an amazing story, which we won't go over again. So we've worked out how to be best sports. That was a true story. That actually happened.
Yeah.
Anyway. All right, so best sports. Okay, best painted. This is a bit of a challenge. So, do we risk it and commission paint it and then fib, or we paint
it
ourselves?
Ask the artist not to sign the work, and then you're fine.
Okay. Ask the artist not to sign his work. Okay, interesting. And not post pics up.
Yeah.
So
if you keep them in a lockup somewhere, and don't let them communicate with the outside world until 1 to 2 years after you've won the trophy.
I have another trick, but I want to hear what James's trick is first, because my trick's pretty wild. James, what's your trick?
I think if I've got to win best painted, I'm paying someone, and then every time someone's like, "Oh, did you paint that?" I'll be like, "Yeah," and then I'll do this, and I'll be like, "Oh, I've still got the claw hand from holding my paintbrush. It hurts so bad, but I think it was worth it. Do you?"
Yeah.
And then if they say no,
yep,
I'll slide a tenner across the table.
Or say that you got a robot to paint it, but you built the robot.
Yeah, an AI.
Yeah,
You got an
A
AI to
robot.
paint it.
a robot.
Yeah. Yeah, we could do what Games Workshop do and just not credit the artists. That's the classic. But I have another more surreptitious way of winning it. Before the event, find out the people who...
Slapshot.
No. Before the event, find out the other people who are attending the event who look like they might have a well-painted army. Screen cap pictures of their army on their socials and then post it on your own socials, say, commission job I'm currently working on. And then when you get to the event, be like, well, that's a commission job.
Then you might win lots of best painted prizes because you'll win all of them. They'll come first, second, and third.
Nice. I like that one.
Because Sam Morgan has been using Joe Pagano's pictures on Twitter for years. It's my favourite bit.
Yeah, but
Okay.
he's in a different continent. He's got to get a little bit closer to the one that he's copying, isn't he?
That is true. That is true.
Yeah.
Okay. So then follow. Okay. So we've done how to. Okay. And then finally, right. Okay. So what are we going to do, Nathan? What army are you going to paint up for the event to become world champion this year? Come on. What are you doing?
Some sprigs.
Fucking shock. Fucking shock. All right. Okay. James, what about you? What are you going to paint up this year to become world champ? Don't forget, Games Workshop models only.
From
Only games-
1980s.
No, it
Skaven.
can be any of them. You do it to Skaven.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because
And
he's
only
really
Night
good
Runners.
at doing hands.
Yeah. Only Night Runners.
I'm really good at painting hands, so I'm going to do Night Runners.
Night Runners. Okay. I'm going to do Salamanders in a
Nice.
Seraphon army,
Uh,
I think.
very nice. Nice
Yeah,
That's a
models.
terrible choice.
Yeah.
Already, -4 on your score.
I'll be like, these are official models, bro.
Yeah.
These are official. These are real ones. So I'm going to do
And someone,
Salamanders.
even staff, will be like, "Were we drunk when we released these?"
Like, we still make these?
Yeah.
What
We
the
still-
fuck?
What is this absolute toilet?
People give us money for this.
Yeah. So
Good
that's
money
it.
too.
Yeah. Razor Gores. Yeah. Or Razor Gores. I might go for that. I think I'm going to do Seraphon, and I'm going to paint up my Salamanders finally. So that's perfect. Maybe some Saurus Knights, which has always been a dream of mine.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that'd be good. Okay. Yes, I am. So okay. So
Always. Have you seen the size of them? Anyway, yeah, carrying on.
Right. So yeah. Anyway, that's it. That's how to become a champ. So do expect in November to see me, Nathan, and James, who will have. Hold on though. We've got to go to some qualifying events. That's a problem. They're all sold out. Shit.
Oh. We could just bribe people to buy their tickets off them.
No,
Or we
we'll
could
hack
bribe
BCP
people.
site. No worries.
Hack
We're
the
internet
BCP
hackers
site.
as well. Yeah, whatever the BCP DX was.
Even
It's
Dishy
You know-
doesn't know how to work it.
I reckon the person that owns BCP, they're on a winner this year because they could just edit the results.
His name's Diffie, and actually they've just set up an oceanic tournament circuit, the OTC. So between Fiji isn't involved, sadly, but between New Zealand and Australia, they've set up a tournament circuit, and there will be Age of Sigmar tournaments in there as well.
Oh,
Yeah,
is
it's
Bali in there? That close enough to there?
I don't know if Bali's in it. I will check, but that's something you can find on. A new.
BCP.
Yeah, to be fair, Johnny Slams is
OCT.
right. Do you know what I might start doing? I might just start fucking absolutely scalping tournament tickets, the big tournaments. I'll be like, 8 of my mates. They'll be like, oh, okay. Yeah, just buy. And they'll just be like, it's against such a qualifying event, mate. Like, that's at least an extra 40 quid for me. Come on. Like, that's a good market to be in, surely.
Yeah.
Oh, boy. I can't believe it. I'm now a ticket scalper. That's what I've always wanted. Imagine me just outside of a school hall in England near a Greg's. I'm like, oh, you want your tournament tickets?
Any unwanted?
Do you know what? Like, hilariously, you say it because it sounds real dodgy when you say school hall. But the hilarious thing is that, like, if Warhammer suddenly exploded from, like, Amazon and this, right? And it goes huge. And some scalpers are like, this is it. This is the one. We buy tickets, we resell them. And then they're like, what arena's it at? Oh, Sandwell School, Hall B. And you're just like, and they're like, what the is this?
I just like the idea that there's like all sorts of Warhammer players or Old World players or Night Age players who've been like the uncle in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, just sat there for years doing very little. And now they've heard that they can get the golden ticket, and they've got a little spring in their step now, and off they are to the Games Workshop store, pick themselves up some new minis, they're off their painting. It's just a great time. Listen, this has been a wonderful experience. I think ultimately it's great that there's going to be some recognition for some top tournament play. I think Nathan and James agree with that as well. But as always, Games Workshop could always do better by their community, which is something we always hold them to all the time. Because why wouldn't you? They're a fucking corpo. Why wouldn't you want a corpo to do better by the people around it? Stop being a weirdo. That's my answer. So, Nathan, any shout-outs before we head out today?
I'll shout out the rogue person that's making dinner.
That's sweet of you. That's sweet of you.
Yeah.
James, what about you?
I'm going to shout out old school GW, because when I read the Dice Men book, which was really good, one of the most hilarious things that I realized is that the artist that wrote in every book, drew in every book, and sculpted every model in the book were named. All of them. And at the back, they even printed what artist had done what. And I thought,
why did they do that, James?
Now, I don't know. I was like, what a ridiculous thing to do, to credit people for their work.
Well done to old
Seems like madness.
It does seem like madness. I agree.
Them old days.
Yeah, them old days.
Yeah.
I'm going to shout out. Who am I going to shout out? Just the chat. Just the chat for being great. What up, chat? You're just wonderful people. And obviously, just have a great time. Listen, it's all fun. Like, it's just silly toy soldiers. So just have a great time with being great and having fun. And I think Nathan's point is best, actually. I'm going to shout out Nathan, because Nathan made the best point.
I didn't make no points.
Well, other than the fact that you should go watch the video of me and Nathan Yikes!
Yikes!
You should go watch the video of me and Nathan finding out about how chairs are made. The bit that is important is we'll end up with maybe more people playing the game that we love. We get to hang out with and be mates. And that's the best bit, because you get to hang out with new people and make new friends. See you later, chat. Look after yourself. Thanks for listening. If you listen to the podcast, stay hydrated. If you would like to support the show on Patreon, that'd be fucking sweet, so I can buy dinner. And then if you would like to like and subscribe and all that other stuff, then please do. See you soon. Bye. Bye-bye. Bye. Bye.